Hello, everyone. I am Sarah McDermott, PRINDIE founder, and here with me today is Erenik Beqiri. I hope I said it right.
Said it right. You said it
Okay,
perfectly.
perfect.
Nice to meet
Um,
you.
he is the writer-director of the short live-action film The Van, which is a 2020 PRINDIE official selection. We're thrilled to have it in our lineup. So, Erenik, thank you so much for being here today to talk about your film.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So this story, it's definitely a darker kind of story. So we have Ben, a young man. So he's living in Albania, hoping to immigrate to England. And he doesn't just want to take himself to England, he also wants to bring along his father, who he clearly loves very much. The father clearly loves him very much, is very concerned for him. So Ben is trying to save money to make this dream a reality. And what he's doing to earn this money is he's basically engaging in these horrific, what are essentially cage matches. They're just taking place in the back of a windowless van, where he will get in with another man, and basically that van drives until there's just one man left standing, either because the other's been knocked out, or in certain scenarios, as we've seen, because one is dead, at the end. So, Erenik, to get started talking about this film, a lot of times when I talk with people in the film industry, there's a lot of discussion around concept and sort of finding that high concept that elevates, the whole film, the whole piece of work. And what stuck out to me with this is that you have such a clear, strong, immediately engaging idea, this concept with the van and with what's going on with the van. How did this idea come to you originally?
Um, the idea actually is coming from something that happened for real. It's not, I mean, it's fiction, but it's partly fiction. I saw a documentary like, I don't remember now, but many years ago, like 6 years ago, probably more. And actually, it happened in America. If I remember correctly, it was in California. There were these people organizing dogfights, but they were using small cars, not the van. So they were putting the dogs inside the trunk of the car, and the car would do basically a road going from a point and then coming back. Then they would open the trunk and see which of the dogs was alive. So and I saw it like by accident. It's not that I wanted to, but I don't know why it's stuck in my mind. And yeah, I basically thought, okay, how could I take that idea and bring it to life with people? So obviously you need a bigger space to do that, not just the trunk of the car. So it is the van. So that was that was the spur of the whole thing. But besides that, I mean, that is just, I think, the the concept on the surface. But for me it was more important to have the relationship between the father and the son. Why to have this character go inside the van, and why would he fight? Is he going to fight for himself? Is he going to fight for somebody else? So I had to look also at the current situation of what my country has been going through with the whole immigration, because it's something that has happened before a lot, but it's still, you can feel it still in the younger generation, this need to immigrate, this need to go to another country. So I wanted to mix, I mean, I realized that I had to mix both of them, and yeah.
Wow. Yeah, watching this, it does just feel so layered. And first, I'll just say, so like the real life inspiration of the dog fights in the trunk is just, it's so inhumane and just horrible. And I
Yeah,
think for you
it
to
is.
take that and to kind of process this through this film, it's just really interesting. In terms of what you're saying about, your country and immigration, I feel like there's so much to unpack here in terms of how you are using these characters and their relationship, and you have sort of the older generation and the younger generation.
Mm.
And I had read in another interview that you gave, that a lot of times with your films, you like your characters to sort of be a portrait of society or representing things going on. So I certainly, would love you to speak to that a little bit with these characters, sort of what you are hoping that they will show
Mm.
about society at this
Yeah.
time.
Well, like you said in the introduction, the two main characters is Ben and his father. So for me, it was the relationship between both of them was something really important. And also, when you're making a short film, is how do you establish the characters, because you don't have a lot of time to establish the characters. So it was important to try and give the audience the idea from the beginning that the, the, the son is trying to immigrate, is trying to look for a better future, while the father, I think the father sees that his future is gone. It's like the older generation. He had probably the chance to go away, but he decided to stay, and he's worried about his son. So he's trying also to hold him back, but ultimately he loves his son. So yeah, I mean it's also a clash between two different generations, and I think when it comes to the father seeing how much the son is sacrificing, it's something that people here have seen their kids go away. You know, like when they were taking the boats, for example, to go to Italy from, because Italy is close to Albania, they would take young generations back then. They would take just a boat and just go unsecure to in the waters to go to Italy. So there were a lot of this kind of things going on in my mind while working with the characters.
I definitely got from their very first interaction in your film, got just that this was such a loving relationship. And I think you did a really great job bringing that out. And I certainly felt the father's pain throughout watching like what his son was doing. And I have a son who's much smaller. He's 6, but I think, just watching this, and as any good film does, you put yourself in that headspace. And like, what if this was, you were watching this with your child, or this was going on? And you could definitely feel it. One thing that kept coming to mind is it really made me think of like The Gift of the Magi a little bit, that story. I don't know if that popped
Sorry,
in.
what was that?
Oh, the Gift of the Magi. I don't know if you know that story. Oh,
No, I don't.
so I think in that story it's actually a husband and a wife, but the one they both make sacrifices to each give the other something.
Okay.
But in the end, it sort of negates the giving because they
Okay,
give things away. Yeah, it made me think of that story.
but but not just to say, to add something to the whole thing. I think with both characters, it was, I think the kid was the son. Let's say, was doing some sort of sacrifice from the beginning, because he was trying to get himself away, but he was trying to bring the father along. So he was sacrificing also for him, and and the father saw how he was doing this by fighting. So some of the fights were under his name, let's say, and I guess that's what leads to the conclusion. I mean, I don't want to do the spoiler now, but
yes,
that's what leads the father to do in the conclusion of the story.
Yes. Now, from the father's point of view, because the son, of course, wants to bring him along with him, and is the father kind of just trying to be selfless and say, no, you don't have to take me? Or do you think the father is just very set in his ways and actually doesn't really want to go?
I don't think he's selfless. I think he's worried about the son, and I think that he sees that, he knows that both they have ties together. They're emotional ties, and of course, father son. I think he's trying his best and not succeeding to make him stop doing this fight. So I never thought, actually. For me, when I had other interviews, I always said it's more of a love story between a father and the son. I mean, that's how I saw it from the beginning. I mean, there is the whole thing with the fight, and that's what you see, and that's the let's say the rough part. But for me, it was more about the love story between both father and son.
Now, in terms of the son, so so again, he's sort of doing this out of desperation because he's trying to make money. But I did also wonder about his character a bit, that there is also sort of this rage and maybe a compulsion to keep doing this, where, there might be other things he could do to make money, or even other things that are dangerous or wrong. But he chooses this. And I wondered about that with his psychology. If you just saw that he had so much anger, that there's something in him that sort of draws him to doing this fighting in the van versus doing anything else.
I think that I think that's like a shortcut for him to get the money, and I think that in my mind he started it without having a real plan, but he saw that he was good doing that, and then it became his main quest or main aim, if we want to call it, and that's what it drove him to try and have more fights. But by each fight he was building up wounds and he was building up scars. And I, in a way, I also thought of him as a guy that wouldn't try to go the other way, like become a criminal. He's like a rock. He's with himself. He doesn't really have many people to talk to besides the father. So he has this anger with himself. And in the film, you notice that the mother is missing. So I think that also underlines something on his character.
Okay, for sure. Now, for you as a writer, do you kind of know the backstory of what happened to the mother, or is it more just left up to people to imagine?
I try to have an idea, but I don't really question too much. So when I'm writing, I go more about. I don't try to plan too much. I have an idea of the story, and then I try to surprise myself to be also to surprise myself. So if I'm writing now and I go in the next page, I want to be like, okay, so this is going to happen, and yeah, I think that's also what keeps me writing. So. But for the mother, I knew from the beginning that it would be missing, because if the mother would be there, it would be a totally different matter, and it would be, I think, a totally different story.
Now, in terms of your writing, so kind of looking at your...
Sorry. Now, do you want me to turn the light?
Oh,
Because
sure,
I don't know.
Sure, go
Okay.
ahead. We'll see you a little more.
Where is the light? Okay, big, because...
Thank you. There we go. So in terms of your writing, so I kind of looking through your past films, obviously you wrote and directed this. I know in the past you've worked with other writers. So sort of the notable one that jumps out is your thesis film that was written by, I think, Jim Oles, who also did Fight Club. So I wanted to ask you about the experience of working with him, and in general, the experience of when you're directing something written by someone else versus you're directing a project that you've written.
The film by Jim Oles, that he wrote, is like so many years ago, and that's actually the first time I directed something that wasn't mine. Now I'm in the middle of that because I'm working with some writers, and we're developing another story, and it's kind of different. It's totally different because I think when I started, for example, with the van, I started with the image of him coming out of the van, not the actual fight. I started why he's coming out from here, and then you start having these questions, and one question leads to another. But this image was stuck in my mind, and that was, I think, also the driving force. And usually, my process is totally different from when somebody else is writing, because I try to find also sometimes references from other films that I like more in the visual style, not really the story, but the visual style. So I need to have in my mind the way that I'm going to shoot before I actually start to write it, or while I'm writing in the beginning. So that helps a lot. And it's really different when you're doing from somebody else's work. And when I did that, I think I was too young. I don't know what I was doing back then. So I don't even remember much about it, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
But he was nice with the story, and Jim was nice with the story, and he let me do what I wanted to, even though I was young and inexperienced. So.
Nice. That's the kind of writer you want to work with. That sort of gives you the space. Another part of this film that was very intense to watch, and that I think you guys did such an excellent job with, was the makeup. So his progression from like that first fight to the end, and his face by the end, it was just so intense. I was very curious to know, exactly how long it took to do that makeup, and just the process of you guys sort of designing this progression again of some cuts and scrapes to this face that has really been like pulverized by the end. How difficult that was.
For the whole process, for the wounds in his face, I think they were in my mind. They were not in my mind. In the script, they were very important. And when I was thinking of his character, I made this the evolution of the wounds that I said to Sarah, to the makeup artist, and how by each stage it will progress to get worse and worse. And because I think the wounds on his face are adding adding a lot to his character. They're building a lot his character and how much he's willing to carry, the pain he's willing to carry. It's really, it tells you a lot about the character, and because he's not complaining about it, he's carrying this pain and he's holding it by himself. So that was really important to show how kind of a rock this character is. And about the process, the actual process of doing it, so we shot in around a week, and Phoenix, the actor, had to go, like he was the one that, along with Sarah, the makeup, both of them had to wake up the earliest and leave later. I mean, because they had to wake up, I think, like 2 hours before everybody shot
Yeah.
to do this. And then by the end of the day, they still had it while everybody was going. They still had it 2 more hours. So, yeah, it was really something, to go through it. And I'm thankful to both of them because they showed courage. And it was January, cold, so they didn't complain about it, and they did an amazing job. And it's funny because the whole week I saw Phoenix, he had scar tissues, and then it was progressing worse. So by the end of the shoot, when we had the wrap up party, and I saw him, like the face without the wounds, I was like, "Who are you?" Like who is this guy?
You get
Because
sick.
I was so used, yeah, I was so used to see him, and also people when we were shooting, people around, they would see him and were like, "What's happening to him? What's wrong with him?" So it was interesting, also the reaction of the people.
Oh my goodness. It's crazy. No, see, did Phoenix, so the young man who's in the film, does he have any training as a fighter? I just wanted to ask because he did one scene he's punching the wall and I'm like, wow, he looks like a real fighter, but
Yeah, he he told me that he did some boxing before, but I'm not sure at what level. I mean, I yeah, I think he trained before. He had some knowledge. Clearly, he had some knowledge to do that. But we rehearsed the scene a lot with the other guy. I mean, we were shooting even before shooting. We were looking, and then by night rehearsing the scene. And then from the gym, we transported the scene to the van because the van is the space inside is really telling you how to choreograph the whole thing.
Mhm.
But he had an idea. I mean, he had an idea about boxing.
Nice. So, so another thing I found when I was kind of reading up on you, and I found another interview. Obviously, right now we're doing, virtual film festival. Everything pretty much is virtual,
Yeah.
so you don't get the experience of actually seeing it with an audience. But one thing that you had mentioned in this other interview was how much you enjoyed getting to watch your film with an audience and see their reactions, and how sometimes their reactions are very surprising because it's just not what you would have expected. So I wanted to ask if, in the past when this film was screened and you were able to see it with an audience, what were some of the reactions that they had to what was happening on the screen that stuck with you or that surprised you?
Mm, well, it's funny because I've been in many festivals with it, and but some so people were so before the film starts and the people are chatting, and then lights are off, and then see the film and the lights are on after the film, and I've seen lots of people like wiping tears, and that was like most of the that I remember a lot because from many festivals, like from Morocco to France to Italy, so it's like, and that's good because it's giving the same, it's working everywhere the same. So that's good. So yeah, and I've had people then afterwards come and talk to me about stuff, but yeah,
Mhm.
about how it was affected and about immigration. So yeah,
Mhm.
lots of this stuff.
Now, do you as a filmmaker, do you tend to gravitate more towards these darker stories? Do you think, or?
I don't know. I like I said in the beginning, I really don't I don't I don't tell myself that I'm going to do, let's say, a thriller or a dark story. I just know that I'm going to make this story. I have this image and I probably have this character, and I try to find and surprise myself. So but by the end, yeah, what I see sometimes what I'm doing, and I'm like, okay, it turned out maybe darker than I would have expected. So, but definitely I will try to do something else more. I don't want to say light, but try to explore more with the film.
Cool. Well, Erenik, thank you so much for sharing this film and for sharing it with our Prindie community in this year's festival. To anyone watching, make sure to see The Van. It's definitely a must-see. So we're having a virtual festival this year, September 10th to the 13th. Be sure to check it out. And Erenik, thank you so much again just for being here today so that we could
Thank
talk
you.
about it a little bit more in depth.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.